Monet became a professional artist in the 1860s in Paris and along the Normandy coast. He was enormously careful about what he painted. He was quite concerned about entering into the fray of the larger, higher echelons of French art. And he was someone who was keenly aware of his own talents. He thus was not only careful about what he chose to paint, but he also was constantly looking at other artists, being able to try to use their innovations to his own ends, which he did with great aplomb. Monet began by painting some remarkably fresh landscapes, like the view of Ruelle from 1858, a picture which had to have been preceded by other paintings that's so sophisticated. But he also, in the 1860s, moved from landscape to portraiture, to still life, to genre scenes. In fact, he really wanted to attack every category of the traditional subject hierarchy, except, of course, for history, mythology, and religion painting. So there's a wide range of his pictures from the 1860s that show his rapacious appetite for the new and for being able to translate the old into a personal vocabulary. So this appetite yielded not only certain landscapes. For example, he painted one of the most amazing seascapes at night. And he did, in contrast to that, a picture called The Magpie from 1869, which is one of the most shimmering, light-filled winter scenes, perhaps, in the 19th century. So he really is covering literally the whole time frame of a diurnal event. Monet's work of the 1860s has got a kind of clarity to it, a kind of detail and specificity to it. He has pictures, for example, of the renovated city of Paris, where he's virtually like Canaletto. When later in life, for example, in 1908, when he goes to Venice, the scenes that he paints of that magical city couldn't be more different. The buildings sort of glisten and fade into the atmosphere of the Italian city, whereas in the 1860s, the clarity and precision with which he renders, for example, the church of Saint-Germain-l'Auxerrois is a kind of attention to detail that virtually a photographer would have provided. Come later works, that is subsided, and indeed it is really the aspects of painting itself, color, light, atmosphere, which take over. Argenteuil was a small town located just outside of Paris, essentially a 15-minute railroad ride, which it still is today. Monet moves there in 1871 and lives there until 1878. It was a critical time for him, and the town itself was absolutely central to his ethos and to his productivity. It was a town that was under change, pressured by the Industrial Revolution and by the need for Parisians to be able to have a breath of fresh air in the countryside as well. So therefore he would paint pictures of boating and of the railroad bridge and of townspeople within the squares and the like, all of which are very accurate in their location and specificity, but at the same time embrace the notion that was popular, of course, amongst the middle class, that there was the opportunity to have a richer, fuller life, both outside the city and thanks to the Industrial Revolution and the produce and products that it provided. When Monet was in Argenteuil, he rented two houses, the second one more expensive than the first, so therefore it underscores the fact that he actually was making a lot of money at the time, as much money as doctors and lawyers were in Paris, even though it's often said that he was in fact starving. That was not the case. He would paint his own backyard with his wife and children in it, so it seemed as if it really was the ideal environment for this new emerging middle class. Some of the figures that are also promenading along the Seine are like you and I, able to breathe the balsamic air of the countryside and enjoy the fruits of their labors. During his time in Argenteuil, he had married his wife, had a child in the 1860s out of wedlock, but they also had a second child in the 1870s there in Argenteuil. So it really became a family place. And there are a number of pictures that show that. There's a luncheon picture, for example, of 1873. Beautiful scene set with a table out in the backyard of his house, small child playing upon the ground, the woman in the background, all the delights of the middle class dream.